First up, Apple. You trimmed 3 million shares to 249.5 million shares of Apple, and that caught a lot of people by surprise. They were wondering if you were selling.
No. The one other fellow in the office, one of the two, had about 6 or 7 million shares. He had it before I did. He works with a limited amount of money, 13 billion roughly. So if he wants to buy something, he needs to sell something. If I want to buy something, I've got cash around to do it. So he sold about 3 million shares, I believe, cut it in half roughly to buy something else. And I didn't. I've never sold a share.
So this was not even a conversation you had with him, I take it? This is either Todd or Ted. You're not going to say who.
It's his business. Yeah, I mean, they do not check with me. I sometimes learn at the end of, well, I do at the end of the month. I look and see how their portfolio compares to the month before and see what they've done.
This generated a lot of questions from viewers, and let's go to one, T14. Jedi Marcus wrote in, if you loved it, meaning Apple, undervalued at $200 plus and $1 trillion valuation, at $200 plus and $1 trillion valuation, why would you sell any this past quarter? You've answered it already. You didn't sell.
Yeah, and incidentally, I've never paid $200 for any stock in Apple anyway.
Would you start buying at 160 or something? Was that?
No, well, no, I think our
average
cost about 141 or something like that.
Okay. There was a question that also came in from Rick Safaraz. This is T90. He said, do you plan on adding to your Apple position throughout 2019? And I just want to also bring up a tweet from Jim Cramer. He tweeted back on February 5th, doesn't Apple trade like Berkshire is back buying? I spoke with Cramer about it, and he said, look, I don't know anything. It's just all of a sudden the stock's really picking up. It's almost as if. So are you interested at lower levels?
I'm always interested at lower levels in a number of stocks we own. There's some where we really can't go over 10%, and generally I don't like to go over 10% because it complicates life quite a bit. With banks, it actually throws us into the bank holding company ground. So there are stocks that I would buy that we own 9 and a fraction %, and I actually may be selling a little bit because they're repurchasing their shares, and I don't want to drift over 10%. But Apple, I don't see myself selling. The lower it goes, the better I like it, obviously.
I mean, Apple is not one of those 10% stocks. Don't you own about 5% of the shares?
About 5%.
So is this a situation where you have been buying since it came so much lower at the end of December?
It's really not back to where it may have briefly, very briefly got there, but if it were cheaper, we'd be buying it. We aren't buying it here.
There was another question that came in. This is T91 from Umar Zubair, who said Apple decelerated share repurchases from around $20 billion in the third quarter to around $8 billion in the fourth quarter, just when the stock price went down by about 30%. In fact, Apple repurchased 0 shares in December of 2018 when the stock hit a 52-week low. What are your thoughts on Apple's repurchase deceleration?
Well, and Apple has said publicly that they've repeated it, that their goal is to reach what they call a cash neutral position, where their debt is roughly equal to the cash. I think that would take 130 billion or so to get there, but of course they could make some acquisitions. On the other hand, they're earning a lot more than their dividends, so that number goes up. Mentally, I say to myself, we're very likely, and a lot of things could change this with them, and the lower the price goes, the better it gets, but they should be at 4 billion shares probably in maybe 3 years, and so our 5% would become something over 6% at that point, and I like that prospect. And then we might buy some ourselves, who knows, it depends on the price. But they will buy a lot more stock if it's cheaper than if it's higher, and you know, it's just simple math. We're better off if in the next 3 years Apple is cheaper.